Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. As you join, please feel free to put your name, your pronouns, and organization, and an emoji to show how your day is going in the chat. Good afternoon. My name is Tanisha Morrison. I am our Youth Leadership and Policy Associate. I apologize for any noise in the background. I want to allow our panelists today to introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marcella Sills. I am from, oh, I'm so sorry. I realized my camera wasn't on. My apologies. Hello, everyone. My name is Marcella Sills. I'm from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm a youth advisory council member alongside being a community outreach volunteer for the Oklahoma Resource Access Network. And now I'll pass it off to Tori.
Everyone, my name is Tori Keta. My pronouns are she, her. I'm from the island of Oahu in Hawaii. I'm also a member of the National Network for Youth's National Youth Advisory Council. I'm also a master's of social work student here at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and I'm a certified youth peer support specialist here in Hawaii. And through this work, I use my lived experience to work alongside youth who are currently navigating systems like foster care, juvenile justice, and homelessness. And I'll pass it to CJ.
Hello, everybody. My name is CJ. I use he, him pronouns. I'm from Chicago. I'm also a part of the National Youth Advisory Council, as well as the executive director of Break the System Project. Yeah, next slide. So today we will go over a summary of the rights for immigrant youth experiencing homelessness, running through some potential scenarios, and introduce the taking charge of your safety checklist, and then finish with some additional community resources and a quick Q&A. Next slide. So, a little introduction of the National Network for Youth. The National Network for Youth is a national nonprofit dedicated exclusively to preventing and ending youth, young adult, and young parent family homelessness. We work alongside organizations and individuals on the front lines of ending youth homelessness, including youth with lived experience, youth serving providers, advocates, and policymakers. And today's webinar is being led by members of the National Youth Advisory Council. If we can go to the next slide. So a little disclaimer before we start. So this webinar will cover important and sometimes difficult topics, including navigating services when you feel unsafe, walking through scenarios that involve ICE, police, and Border Patrol. Some of the scenarios and information may be distressing. If at any time you feel the need to step away or leave the webinar, please don't hesitate to do so. The recording slides and any external links will be provided to all registrants and attendees afterwards. Please note that NN4Y is not a legal entity, and this webinar does not provide legal advice. Instead, we are centering how youth experiencing homelessness navigating their rights and can advocate for themselves. So in this webinar, we'll provide a variety of free legal help options that can address any specific legal questions you may have. Regardless of immigration status, the Constitution applies to every person in this country. It is critical that you know your rights as a person. And yeah, I'll pass it over to who's next.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Marcella Sills, and today I will be covering what to know, knowing your rights as a person who has, sorry, my apologies. Could you go back to the previous slide, the slide before? Thank you. Yes, so today I'll be covering Know Your Rights. So what immigrant youth need to know while experiencing homelessness. Next slide, please. So in this section, I'll be covering a little bit about access to shelter and housing. But before I get into that, I kind of want to talk about a federal policy that we have. So what I'm about to talk about is the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and this is a federal policy that applies to everyone in the U.S. regardless of your immigration status. So this means you have the right to be free from discrimination basis on your race, ethnicity, your ancestry, national origin, sexual orientation, your gender identity, your mental or physical disability, as well as in HIV status. You also have the right to be protected against unlawful searches in your home without permission or a valid warrant, which we'll talk a little bit about in a little bit, as well as you have the right to live in a safe, healthy home and be provided with basic needs. So this includes meals, clothing, medical care. You also have the right to be free from physical abuse, sexual abuse, or neglect of your basic needs. And in general, there are some restrictions on access to government-funded shelters or housing programs for those with an undocumented status. So it kind of just depends on what kind of funding the program has, which determines what rules they have to follow. So it's really good if you kind of call ahead of time and see if that specific shelter or housing program will take you with a undocumented status. And a lot of times, if it's federal funding, you probably can't, but if it's state funding, you most likely can. Next slide, please. So exploring options when it comes to shelter and housing. So as I just mentioned, it's really important to always call to check the requirements before you seek out a program. So most short-term homeless shelters and domestic violence shelters accept everyone, regardless of their immigration status. So with longer-term housing programs like rental assistance vouchers, they may have eligibility restrictions if they receive federal funding. So again, always call to check requirements before you seek out the program. And there are also emergency runaway and homeless youth, so known as RH shelters that can help minors experiencing homelessness on their own, including immigrant youth. So this slideshow will be available after this, so you'll actually be able to go through the slideshow and actually click the links. So there are some links on this slide, so you'll be able to click search here. You'll find your state, and then you look for runaway and homeless youth. You'll look for a basic center program, and also you can call, chat, text, or email the National Runaway Safe Line for help finding shelter and housing options regardless of immigration status. Next slide, please. Okay. Okay, so access when it comes to healthcare. So as I just mentioned, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 applies to shelter, housing, employment, healthcare, any of the sort. So what I just read also applies to this as well. But unfortunately, people with an undocumented status do not qualify for most federal healthcare benefits. So this includes something like a Medicaid. In my city where I'm from, it's called Sooner Care. So they wouldn't be able to qualify for that, as well as a Medicare or a Children's Health Insurance Program known as CHIP. In fact, now because of current administration, there are new, even stricter restrictions on federal healthcare benefits eligibility, and this also applies to those who have a legal immigration status as well. And just to kind of add this in, you also have the right to receive emergency medical care. Next slide, please. So exploring healthcare options. Okay, so with some states, they have special laws to use state money to give healthcare benefits to pregnant youth with an undocumented status. So with this link, you'll be able to like click and see if that state could offer you those benefits as well. So some other healthcare options that you can explore for those who have an undocumented status. This includes emergency care. So again, everyone has the right to go to emergency room regardless regardless of their immigration status. Community health clinics. This means that clinics may have no restrictions or fewer restrictions depending on what kind of funding that they receive. So you're most likely going to receive help from a community health clinic than a hospital who is receiving like federal dollars, if that makes sense. This also applies to state-specific programs. So some states use state funding to provide healthcare for those to those with an undocumented status. So as I was mentioning earlier, a lot of these programs have federal funding. So unfortunately, that doesn't apply to those who have an undocumented status. But if you use state funding, it's you have more freedom to use those dollars pretty much. But again, it's important just to call and ask just to make sure. Next slide, please. Access to employment. So again, undocumented workers have almost all the same rights as workers who are citizens. So this means your employer cannot deny you your guaranteed rights because of your undocumented status. If your rights are violated, you may still be able to report the problem or get legal help, no matter what your immigration status is. So again, you have basically the right to be free from discrimination. And that also includes having a disability as well. So let's say if you're a worker who has an undocumented status, you're also unhoused and you have a disability, and let's say you are being discriminated against, you are legally protected under the Americans with Disability Act. Next slide, please. Okay, access to public education. So pre-K through so K through 12 students with undocumented statuses have the same rights to a free public education as students who are citizens. Federal law also states that schools aren't allowed to share information about students' immigration status with authorities without that parent's consent. So in general, when it comes to receiving like public education, especially if you are experiencing homelessness, your school cannot deny you enrollment. So even if you don't have a parent or guardian to help you navigate that, every public school in the U.S. has a homeless liaison. So it's really important that you ask your counselor or another worker in the school, hey, could I speak to the homeless liaison? Legally, they cannot deny you that, regardless of what your status is. This also means that you can be provided with transportation, free meals, and other support you might need to stay in school, like supplies or tutoring, especially if you're unhoused, because most likely you won't have access to certain things, as well as participating in school activities, extracurriculars, and school activities. So you can ask your school to waive any fees that might come with these. Obviously, all schools are different in the U.S., so it's just good to ask. The worst they could say is no. But if that does happen, I would make sure to ask for my school counselor and homeless liaison. And next slide, please. And now I will be passing it off to my colleague, Tori.
Thanks, Marcellus. So now we're going to walk through some scenarios. And like we said in the beginning, these are going to be these are heavy topics. So please do what you need to do to take care of yourself. And the goal isn't to scare anyone or to tell you that you should be expecting these scenarios. It's really to ensure that people know what their rights are before they're put in a stressful situation. Next slide, please. So, as a young person experiencing homelessness, we're more likely to be stopped by or have more interactions with law enforcement like police. So, if an individual is stopped by the police or ICE, the first thing is to remember is to stay calm. And in some states, individuals may be required to provide their name and ID if they're stopped by the police. But you have the right to remain silent, which means you generally don't have to answer questions, including where you were born, whether you're a citizen or a US citizen, and how you entered the country. And if an individual is required to carry immigration documents like a green card, individuals should be keeping these documents on them. And you can also refuse consent to search for law enforcement to search your person or your belongings when there isn't legal justification for the search. And another important thing to remember is that these rules can be different at international borders. So not every situation has the exact same set of rules. Next slide, please. And if an individual is arrested or detained, they still have that right to remain silent and can request a lawyer. So the difference between being arrested by the police and being detained by ICE is if someone is arrested by the police, they have the right to a court-appointed attorney if they can't afford one. But if someone is detained by ICE, they have the right to hire an attorney, but the right to a publicly funded attorney doesn't apply. So the government doesn't have to provide one. And it's really important not to sign documents or answer questions without legal advice, especially if they don't understand what they're signing, which in that case, an interpreter can be requested as well. Next slide, please. And many youth experiencing homelessness have difficulties with obtaining vital documents like birth certificates, state IDs, social security cards, with some youth not even having one vital doc. So for people who have their documents already but aren't able to access them, we've embedded some links here that can help guide you in finding out how to get a copy or replacement based on that specific vital doc. And sometimes you have to pay a fee to get a copy or replacement of that vital document. So for my birth certificate, I looked it up in Hawaii. It would cost me like $12.50 to get it replaced. But also in some states, there's laws where that fee can be waived for youth experiencing homelessness. So through this link on the right, you can see if your state waives the fee. And I know all of this can be a bit confusing and overwhelming. So if you're wanting some support with finding where to get started and how to get connected, there's also a free national hotline dedicated to providing legal assistance with obtaining vital docs for youth experiencing homelessness. So let's talk a bit about what happens if someone is stopped while traveling. And again, the first step is to stay calm and to not resist. So if you're driving, pull over somewhere safe, turn off the vehicle, keep your hands visible, and then if requested, you can show the police documents like driver's license, registration, your proof of insurance. And if an individual is 18 and over and required to carry those immigration documents or any documents, those can be requested, or those may be requested. And if someone doesn't have immigration papers, they can exercise that right to remain silent. Next slide, please. And if the individual is the passenger, they can also ask if they're free to leave. And individuals can refuse consent to search of their vehicle unless the police have legal basis to search it. And also Border Patrol can conduct roving patrols, which is where agents continuously move around the interior of the US rather than being fixed in one spot. And there are legal requirements surrounding stops, arrests, and prolonged detention. So Border Patrol have to have reasonable suspicion that the driver or passenger in the car committed an immigration violation or a federal crime to even stop you in question. And an agent's questions should be limited to the suspicion they had for pulling someone over. And the agents shouldn't be prolonging the stop with questions that aren't related to why they even stopped you in the first place. So knowing what the basis for a stop is a huge part of understanding your rights. And it can also help to better understand why you're being stopped or questioned. And then it can help with recognizing when you may be able to ask whether you're free to leave or also choosing to remain silent. And in this situation, both the driver and passenger have the right to remain silent. Next slide, please. And also without a warrant, Border Patrol can board vehicles like buses and trains to ask passengers questions about their immigration or citizenship status within 100 air miles from any external boundary of the US. So this includes international land borders and the entire US coastline. And you can learn more information through that link, the bottom there. And similarly, if someone was stopped in the car, questions should, or similarly to when someone is stopped in the car, the questions should still be brief and related to verifying a person's lawful presence in the US. And as always, that right to remain silent still exists. Individuals shouldn't be required to answer any questions, and they can just state that they don't wish to, answer those. And then air travel has some different rules to them. So a pilot can refuse to fly a passenger if they reasonably believe the passenger is a threat to flight safety. But a pilot can't refuse to allow someone on a flight because of discrimination-based characteristics. So like race, national origin, religion, political belief, so on. Next. So if police or ICE are at someone's home, speaking through the door can be safer than opening it. And individuals can state that they're exercising their right to remain silent and they don't consent to officers entering their home or to conduct a search. And they can say that through the door. There are also these printable wallet cards that can be given to the law enforcement. They could be slid through the door or held to the window, and they can communicate this as well. And there are also additional resources that are in the toolkit, and it's like things like apps that are designed to offer similar support. And even if someone decides to open the door, it's important to know that this does not give officers permissions to come inside. Next slide, please. So it's important to remember that an individual does not have to immediately open the door or let officers inside. They can ask officers to identify themselves and explain why they're there. They can also ask to see their badges or any identification through, a window or a peephole. And if officers say they have a warrant, the individuals can ask them to slide it through the door so that they can, or, hold it up to a window so that they can check that warrant. And so this gives the individual an opportunity to look at what type of warrant it is, see if it's real, and if it's signed by a judge. Because a judicial or court warrant is an official document from a court or government agency signed by a magistrate or a judge. And this allows law enforcement to do things like search inside a private space for something or to arrest someone. So individuals should be looking at the warrant to make sure the name, date, the address are correct, if it's signed by the judge, and only the named person on that warrant should be leaving. And on the other hand, an administrative or ICE warrant is generally signed by an immigration officer rather than a judge. So it may say something like authorized immigration officer or U.S. Department Homeland Security, and it may be labeled with something like warrant for arrest or warrant for removal instead of a U.S. District Court's name. So the important distinction is that the administrative or ICE warrant doesn't have or isn't the same as a judicial warrant, sorry, that's signed by a judge, and it generally doesn't allow law enforcement the authority to enter someone's home without consent. So if officers are presenting a warrant, the individual should be looking carefully about who signed it and what type of warrant it is before deciding whether to come out or to let them inside. Next slide, please. And this is just an example of what those two warrants look like. Warrants are for, specific people or place, and then ICE usually has them for specific people. Next slide, please. So I'll pass it to Marcellus to talk more about taking charge of your safety.
Thank you, Tori. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. So in this slide, I'll kind of briefly go over taking care of your safety, what that kind of looks like as a person who has an undocumented status and is also experiencing homelessness as a young person. So this is kind of a checklist. So for example, when it comes to shelter and housing, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, it's really important before you go into a shelter or housing programs, call anonymously to see if people with an undocumented status can qualify. Also ask if that specific program collects data on immigration status, and if that is the case, who they share that data with. It's really important to get that information because you want to make sure you can consent to your information being shared with who you want it to be shared with. When it comes to healthcare, look for local clinics that offer services regardless of your immigration status, using community resources like a school nurse or health organizations for help finding care. So if you're a young person that is in what is it? K through 12. Make sure that you ask either your homeless liaison, as I mentioned earlier, a school counselor, or a school nurse that you have an undocumented status and you need support getting healthcare. And before going, ask what kind of information they collect and how that information is used. Education, so make sure you're gathering any documents you have. So, for example, previous school records, IDs, and contact your school's homeless liaison, which again, Kayla actually put in the comments all these links. So you should be able to go through these links and click on them, or a trusted adult to ask about transportation options, tutoring, counseling, and free meal programs. And employment. So make sure you keep records of your work hours, pay, schedules, and learn about your workplace rights so you can recognize if you do have unfair treatment. And one thing I kind of want to plug in that's not on this slide is that if you feel like you're ever being discriminated against, and it goes against the Civil Rights Act of 1964, there is an organization based in California called Save Your Six. You can contact them. They help students, adults, pregnant folks, and regardless of your immigration status, they can help you. And if you want to learn more about this checklist, you can look at it in the Know Your Rights for Youth Experiencing a Homelessness toolkit. Next slide, please. And now I'll pass it off to CJ.
Hello, chat. Next slide, please, Tanisha. So much of the information in this webinar was built off of our toolkit that we keep referencing, which was designed by and for young people experiencing homelessness. In addition to the 11 important areas listed, it also helps young people understand how the different ways of federal agencies define homelessness and how that impacts the rights and the resources available to them. We are sharing this toolkit widely next week, so if you guys can stick a bookmark in that, a little sticky note. But we wanted to give you guys all a sneak peek and ask that you guys share it with your network and share it with youth that may come across your programs. But yeah, it's a great toolkit, and it's very detailed. If we can go to the next slide. So getting free legal help, connecting young adults and families with the right legal aid can instantly change the trajectory of someone facing a crisis. So we've compiled essential directories along with immediate hotline numbers spanning legal defense, runaway support, and emergency domestic violence support. And hotlines like these and also like the Vital Document Hotline are especially critical for youth experiencing homelessness. It just helps with navigating complex systems, and having these resources can help when they're completely alone in these situations. Yeah, next slide. So we want to take a moment to kind of spotlight these whistle kits. When we look at rapid response and community safety, accessible tools often make the biggest immediate impact. So whistle protocols give neighbors a clear, audible way to alert one another and build collective protection in real time. We want to give a huge shout out to Pilsen Art and Community House in Chicago, who has shown us what ground level mutual aid looks like by distributing these whistle kits, zines, and essential safety materials. Ultimately, safety relies on strong community presence. So staying vocal, building organized protocols, and standing up for another is really how we can build community in those ways. Next slide. And some more additional resources. So these resources range from legal guides for non-citizen youth to active solidarity toolkits developed by national advocacy leaders. Navigating housing instability becomes even more complex when compounded by immigration status. So having targeted framework really matters. We encourage everyone to, again, bookmark these tools to strengthen your organization's preparedness and baseline legal awareness. But yeah, next slide. A little bit about our vital document hotline that we keep referencing. So the hotline is staffed by pro bono lawyers who can provide state-specific information about obtaining vital documents. So if needed, they can also connect you with local legal clinic to provide free assistance. And yeah, it's available every Wednesday. I'll pass it over to Kayla for some Q&A.
Hey everyone, sorry I was muted accidentally, but thank you so much, CJ. Thank you everyone else for sharing. This was so great. We do have some questions and I figured we can go through together. Marcellus and Tori, if you'd like to turn your camera on, that way we can see everyone's beautiful faces. The first question I see here is, do any shelters serve undocumented youth? And Tori, I'll pass this one to you.
Yeah, thanks. So it depends on the type of program. Runaway and homeless youth shelters don't require proof of citizenship in order to access their services, and generally privately funded programs are more likely to have no or fewer restrictions on eligibility since they don't take federal funding. But it's always best to just call first anonymously and ask people or ask them if people with undocumented status can qualify. And you should also ask if the program collects any data on immigration status, and if they do, who are they sharing that data with? And yeah, just call the shelter and ask them first.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tori. Another question we have is, does the Vital Document Hotline help youth who are undocumented? CJ, I'll pass that to you.
Unfortunately, no. It is primarily for folks who have documents but are unable to access them. The majority of callers need assistance getting their birth certificate, often because like a guardian is not giving permission for them to access it. However, I will say that Baker McKenzie, who staffs the hotline, is a global firm with offices all over the globe. And we have helped some young people access birth certificates in other countries, including Mexico and the Philippines. So if you're unsure if they can help, it's always best to just give them a call because they might be able to point you into to the right direction of someone who can.
Thank you so much, CJ. Another question we have, Marcellus, I'll actually pass this to you. Someone's asking if it's okay as a case manager to call a provider or shelter staff member and ask basic questions, including, could a person who is not a legal citizen qualify for your program, prior to actually the client calling first?
Thank you for this question. Yeah, this is a really good question. So, personally, I believe in always getting that person's consent. But whenever you are working with young people, especially people that are experiencing housing insecurity, you never know their background. So I think it's always important to ask those kind of questions. Don't use anyone as an example, if that makes sense. Like if I was a case manager, I wouldn't be like, this person named Sarah called me and they have an undocumented status and they need help. I would not do that. I would just go to your supervisor and be like, hey, I am just asking a general question. If we were to have a client come in that has an undocumented status, what programs do they qualify for here and how is their data used? And so therefore, if you do ever have a situation, which will most likely happen where you have a client who is undocumented, you can already have those questions answered just so it can make the homelessness as brief as possible.
Thank you so much, Marcellus. I do want to flag, I see a question in the chat asking if an asylum seeker with a pending 589 case is a documented or undocumented immigrant. I think that's a bit of a technical question for us. If you want to put it in the chat, we can ask some of our legal partners and we'll follow up and let you know. But that's a bit too legal for our non-legal nonprofit. But thank you so much for that question. I think I'll finish with this final question for each of you. How do I create a safe environment for young people to feel comfortable disclosing that they need help? And Marcellus, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think this Question is very complex. There's several answers to this question. I think most importantly, like making sure that you're creating a safe space. So that means like, obviously coming in with respect. I think if you are, as I was mentioning earlier, if you're trying to find resources for that young person, making sure that you get their consent. I think, for me, I can only speak for myself. I really don't like when people do things behind my back. So it's really important to ask that young person if you can share the information or just anything regarding their situation. I think also, not making ignorant comments, like being willfully ignorant, because if you have a person who has an undocumented status and you're making remarks about people who are undocumented, you're showing that person that you're no longer a safe space and they can't approach you. So make sure whatever biases or whatever political beliefs you have, that goes out of the door when you're serving your clients. Make sure that you're being there, you're being respectful, and you're just there to help them and you're meeting that young person exactly where they're at.
Thank you so much, Marcellus. I'll pass the same question to Tori.
I think all great relationships are built off of trust, and everyone, I guess, has a different perception of like what they need to build trust, right? So I'll just speak on for myself. It's definitely like I need to see consistency. So like someone who will follow through on what they say they'll do. I can lean on them for support, even if it's like small things, like just a general question. They'll answer my calls. Just someone that I can lean on. I think too, when I think about like old case managers that I have, even currently, just learning about who I am so that I can later down the line go to them when I do need to ask for help. So it's like spending time together, doing activities. Like I love boba, so one of my old case managers would like just go get boba with me, even if I was just like icing them out and being so silent and mean to them. Like they just like showed that they were going to show up for me, even if like I was being mean. Um, and kind of what Marcellus was saying, just being non-judgmental, meeting them where they're at, um, putting respect at the forefront, regardless of how or what is going on. And also staying curious, letting that person lead with what they need.
Thank you so much, Tori. And CJ, I'll let you answer.
Yeah. So creating a safe environment starts by meeting young people where they are, through low barrier support, lived experience, and genuine peer connections. So when we hire peer navigators or youth advocates who have walked in their shoes, it instantly strips away that intimidating dynamic between staff and youth. We build practical trust first by offering immediate, no questions asked essentials. So, like hygiene kits, transit passes, or hot meals, like Tori mentioned. And before expecting anyone to open up about their deep needs, making sure that those basic needs are met. From there, normalizing resource navigation as a routine step towards personal goals, making sure that they're asking for help actually feels like self advocacy rather than a stigma. Ultimately, just psychological safety comes down to consistent, non judgmental spaces where young people feel protected, valued for their potential, and fully in control of their own story.
Thank you so much, CJ. We do actually have one last question that someone asking for any financial resources, specifically for college, for students who don't get federal help or state help. I'm not sure if any of you guys know, I do want to give a big shout out to Schoolhouse Connection. They are amazing, and they focus solely on students experiencing homelessness from pre-K all the way to higher education. So I'll respond and I'll put that organization in the chat, and I'm sure that's a great resource and they'll have more information on that. But I think that's all. Thank you all so much for your Q&A. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Tanisha for some odds and ends.
All right, thank you so much, everyone, for that really valuable information. I just have some quick updates and announcements from NN4Y. So there is still time to sign up for our summer raffle. It closes next Monday, August 31st. We're raffling off 2 round-trip airline tickets worth $12.50. And our proceeds go directly to NN4Y's work ending youth homelessness and to create resources like these webinars and our Know Your Rights Toolkit for youth experiencing homelessness. So August 31st, that's the last day to sign up for the raffle. We also have a job opening, very exciting. We are hiring for our vital document counsel and pro bono coordinator who will be working really closely with us on our vital document legal hotline. So this person will be working to schedule with attorneys, routing calls, managing our chat platform and admin, and case tracking. So the deadline to apply is September 18th, 2026. So if you are interested or you know someone in your network who would be a good fit for that, please share this with them and encourage them to get that application in by or before September 18th. We also just want to spotlight how to stay connected with NN4Y. If you haven't already, please don't forget to sign up for our listserv so that you can continue to receive updated related youth updates related to youth homelessness. And here's how you can do that through all of our links here, which we'll also send out after the webinar. And lastly, please consider becoming a member of NN4Y. Our network is made up of youth with lived experiences, service providers, and passionate individuals working to end youth homelessness. So I want to thank everyone for being here today. Thank you for joining us. Of course, we'll be following up with the recording and materials next week. I want you all to have a wonderful rest of your day.